Hey everyone, welcome to the job site. As you can see here, we got most of the rails already all set up, but I'm going to take the time. We got 3 more to set right up here, so I'm going to show you that whole process all the way from probing out, making sure we're hitting the rafters, to actually setting the L feet and flashings. So hope you enjoy. Marked out. Measure up 3 inches on the shingle course. Perfect. Still already have it marked out from yesterday. Snap a nice straight line so we know we got straight rails, they're not all wavy. And that's the thing, if you look down the roof, you can see the shingle courses aren't perfect. You know, the shingle courses are kind of wavy, so regardless, we keep a nice straight line because we don't want to follow the shingle courses. Because like I said, those are typically never straight. There's always some variation in the shingling. So now what we do, we've got a straight chalk line. This is a trowel. I got this from Home Depot. This is what I found to be the best for prying up shingles. What we're gonna do is we're just gonna gently work it. We always start with the 2 tabs. If you start through the 1 tab, you can rip it a little bit easier, and start near the seams if you can and go away. So we're gonna start underneath this 2 tab, right underneath the seam. And this is the time where you want to take your time. If you go too fast, if you're impatient, you tear the shingle. So you can kind of see the trowel going underneath and cutting that tar line. We're going to cut that tar line about 1 foot or so from where our attachment's going to be going. That gives us enough flex in the shingle to pull that up to make our probe holes. And then we're going to seal it back down with our roofing sealant. So we're going to essentially replace that tar. This is currently June, so it's hot, but it's still early in the morning, and so the tar is a little bit stiff. It'll warm up as we get closer to noon, and then afternoon you got to be really careful because the shingles get very soft and brittle in the heat. So you really got to take your time then and make sure you're doing it right. So then what we do is we got our mark here. Confirm that that's the rafter, and then we're going to probe. Hopefully you can get a good shot of this. So we're going to lift the shingle. 1, that was a miss. Hit. Ideally we try and make 3 holes. That was 4, never more than 5. If you start making 5 holes, call somebody over who knows a little bit more about the roofing. So we're gonna carry that down. I make a deep hole with this 1/8 inch probe bit, and then I swap it out with a 3/16, and I make the proper pilot hole for the 5/16 bolt that we're going to use. So that's the first one. So now what we're going to do, measure off this 48 inches. Boom, we're at our mark over there. And you know what, I'm just gonna skip ahead and we'll pop these all at once. So we'll measure up 48 inches, make our mark. So I have that marked with an E. That's gonna be the edge of the array. So we don't wanna go any farther with that. You can see that's where the L feet stop, the panels are gonna stop. So now we got our 2L feet marked out. We're gonna, let me grab my pitch hopper here. Love the pitch hoppers. All right, so try and find the seam. Looks like that's a seam. And if your attachment is like right near the seam like this, you get a little bit more flex in the shingle, so you don't necessarily have to go too far. The farther you go, the more we got to seal down. So, you know, if we can disturb the tar as little as possible, that's ideal. But if we have to cut it, we can replace it with sealant. So you can hear the difference in the rafter there. Confirms it's in the rough location. Try and get you a little better shot. Okay, there's one. There's two. There's three. All three are hitting the rafter, so we're going to pick the center hole. That way we know it's the center of the rafter. Plenty of meat. Carry that down to our chalk line. You can see I use my thumb right there, so that when I take out my probe, I can just put it right next to my thumb on the chalk line. And you want to get nice and perpendicular to the roof. You don't want to go up, you don't want to go down, side, left, or anything like that. You want to be nice and straight into the rafter. I'm going to swap this out with a bigger one. That's another reason pitch hoppers are great. Catch your drops. Rule of thumb with us is first guy to drop something off the roof has to buy everybody a beer. So kind of incentivizes people to be a little bit more cautious. All right, Mary, didn't pop this one. We said we were gonna pop this one, but we didn't. We just marked it. Oh well. So you can see the seams there. So we're not gonna have to put a flashing there. We can just pop this course here, leave that other one alone. I've been installing solar for over 10 years, and this trowel is probably the best technique I've developed for popping shingles. I learned it from another guy a long time ago named Phil. He had like a giant one that had like double handles, but this one I think is pretty perfect. You know, not too cumbersome. It's nice and thin, which is key. A lot of the flat bars are a little thicker, so they end up tearing the shingles a little bit more. Whereas this one's thin, it doesn't tear as much. And when you're going up, you can kind of get on top of the tar and kind of cut it from the top instead of from the bottom. From the bottom is going to rip the shingles a little bit easier, whereas from the top, you're kind of going with the course. So it's a little bit safer. I always do a sound test, sonar test, whatever you want to call it, before probing, just to make sure in case the measurements are off. Hit, miss, hit, hit. So now we're gonna go third one from the right, because we know that that's the center of the rafter. Hopefully you can kind of see it up there. And again, we're just going to carry that mark straight down onto our chalk line. Like to clear out the bit. So that way we're removing all of the debris. Oh, it's getting a little windy. Now swap out our bit. Make this a little bit bigger. All right, so now we have our 3 holes ready to be filled. We're gonna take these flashings. These are Unirac Flash Kit Pros. I love them. So those probe holes that we just made are actually gonna get covered by this flashing. And before we do that, I'm gonna seal this whole course here, press down the sealant so that the sealant gets pushed into those probe holes. We're gonna fill this probe hole, and then we're gonna cover this flashing with sealant as well. You'll see that in just a second. But we always test fit these, get these in place, make sure they're gonna fit. Make sure they're not hitting the nails up top here. And any flashing that's close to a seam like this, once we get it set, we're gonna put a flatty flashing up here, so that way any water that comes down from this course can't get in that seam and behind the flashing and get to our holes. All right, here we go. Now we're gonna take our sealant, nice fresh tube. All right. So now, go as far back as we popped it. Replace that tar line so that whole course is glued back down. And so then we're gonna get our probe holes. That's what we just covered right there. And then cover it along the rest of the shingle that we popped. Press, press, press. Press, 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 press. Again, that's why pitch hoppers are great. So now what we just did was we pressed this course down, forcing the sealant into those holes. Now we're gonna fill our probe hole, pump that full. Now we're going to take our flashing. We do an upside down U, upside down U, and then upside down U right above where our hole is going to be going. So this is the bottom, the silver is the bottom, the black's the top. So again, press, press. Lift up the shingle course a little bit in order to slide that flashing up in there. We're gonna line that up over our probe hole. And we're just gonna do the rest of them real quick. We can blast this out. Again, the whole course that we popped. Get up to the probe holes. And then along the other course, press, 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 press. Pump the probe hole full. Upside down U. Upside down U. Upside down U. So again, nice and sealant. We do the top here because that actually helps seal the shingles down as well as the flashing. Slide that up, line it up over our hole, and last one. I love these Milwaukee caulking guns. They're a real forearm saver. They get a nice consistent bead. And you're not squeeze, 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 and then you get blump, 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 blump as you go in. So I highly recommend the Milwaukee 12-volt line. They got a bunch of awesome tools. Upside down U. All right, press, press, press. Pull. And line them up. You can see I use a 12-volt for the probe, but then I use the 18-volt line for my impacts. The 12-volt line just doesn't have enough UGAs to drive these lag bolts. So these are the lag bolts that we use. This is the dock to hold the rail. This is the L-foot attachment. So this is the structural member that the rail's attached to, and then the panel's attached to the rails. Make sure that's nice and tight. You can see it's got a rubber washer, smushes out a little bit, kind of letting you know. We're going to flatty flashing this before we forget. Upside down U. Upside down U. And then this again gets tucked up just like that. So we want to leave this bottom open in case any water gets here, it can drain out. And then this is going to help seal down these courses again. So we slide that up as high as we can. Press, press, press. And again, we're just going to use that sealant to help glue everything back down as well and replace that tar. All right. Next up, got our lag, got our L-foot. Start slow at first so that you know you're going perpendicular and not blowing out the rafter. Then once you know that it's in most of, a good ½ inch or so, then you can drive it. And again, these are lag bolts going into the rafters. This is a rafter system. It can also be trusses. Trusses are the same procedure, but some manufacturers make attachments that don't have to go on structural members, that can actually attach to the decking, the plywood roof essentially. I'm not a fan of those. So again, this is going to get slid up just like that. Pry up courses nice and gently. Push that up past the seam. Press, press, press. Think like a raindrop, bro. And again, that flashing has sealant all the way up to here. So that's gonna help keep this course glued down. Our flashing there to cover the seam, since the seam's pretty close to the flashing edge. And so we know we're far enough from the seam that really there's no water that's going to be able to travel all the way to this bolt. I usually use 4 to 6 inches. If it's less than 4 to 6 inches, I'll put a flashing there. Another rule of thumb is, you know, these flashings are 5 by 7, so you know this is 8.5 inches from the edge of the flashing. So that's why I use this 4-inch gap, because that's pretty much half the flashing, or 6 inches would be 1 inch of overlap of the flashing here with the flatty flashing. So again, just think like a raindrop. Try and prevent any water from getting into any of our penetrations. Honestly, these flashing systems are the best in my opinion. This is from Unirac. Iron Ridge makes some, a lot of other manufacturers make some, but I like the actual metal flashing, so the L foot is sitting onto the metal so it doesn't deform or cut into the edge of the shingle over time. It has a nice rigid surface to get pressed up against and pulled in by that lag. So that's pretty much it. That's an attachment. That's actually 3 attachments for you. We got a couple more to do on this roof here, and line up these rails, start locking them down, and then we can start mounting the micro inverters and wiring. But that is the process for adding attachments. So stick around for the next one.